Welcome to the Killer Countdown. I am your host, Casey Kelderman, and today we are talking Universal monster movies. Today I'm joined with writer, director of such films as Death Rot and Mr. Pointy, Dominic Wieneke. Dom, how's it going?
Good, you?
Good. You just got back from a fun little trip. Let's talk about that for like a brief minute here.
Moment.
Yeah.
What I can talk about.
Yeah.
I was down in New Mexico again. We finished off shooting 13 Fanboy. It was a lot of fun. I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. A lot of people are going to be expecting the typical Friday the 13th, and they're actually going to get a pretty emotional story. So, working with Dee Wallace and Ron Sloan, they had a few scenes together that I seriously had goosebumps when they were shooting. So, it was amazing. So, I'm looking forward to everybody checking it out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like, I kept seeing your post because you posted every single day. I'm like, God, I'm so jealous of you.
I did, and I was trying not to do any spoilers, which kind of pissed a few people off. But I'm like, I really want people to go into this and totally. I didn't want to give away anything.
Yeah.
Because that's things I was experiencing it as we're making it, but I want to see. I want to see how people receive it.
Yeah,
So.
we'll talk about it more sometime. We'll bring you back to
definitely.
talk about it. Maybe when it gets closer to coming out, we'll discuss it.
Give some more spoilers.
Yeah. And we are also joined by Terry Gomez. Terry, you're going to have to scoot in a little closer. There we go. All yeah. Right. How we doing?
I'm doing well.
Yeah,
excited to talk monsters.
Yeah. You ready to talk some monsters?
I think I'm ready to talk some monsters.
Yeah, we're going to do that because this upcoming weekend, Lee Winnell's remake of The Invisible Man is hitting theaters, so that is why we're doing this episode today. We are not joined by my usual co-host Blake. Once again, he missed last week too. What a slacker!
Oh, slacker!
Yeah, he's got the flu here, so
he says.
Yeah, he just doesn't want to talk about these, which is all right. He's like he told me his number one, and we'll talk about that at the end. What his number one is?
Sure.
It's only because he's only seen that one, which might be cheating, Blake.
All right.
Yeah. So we'll get into it here, but let's start off with this. We usually talk about recent horror movies that we have watched. Have you guys watched any recent horror films in the last 2 weeks or so? If you got to pull them up, I always have to because I forget what I ate for breakfast. Yeah, any movies that are not Universal monster related that you have seen that you've watched recently, good or bad? I don't. That's up to you guys.
Well, recently I checked out. It's a little indie film that I don't think many people have heard about called Dr. Sleep. I don't think it made a big push.
No, it didn't make any money, that's for sure.
No, definitely not. And that's the thing. I don't understand why. I think
I have a theory why.
It's a sequel to a 40-year-old film, which is part of it.
It's a very famous 40-year-old film, though.
Yes, but the title to me, I still don't like the title Dr. Sleep.
You don't?
No.
Would you have rather put The Shining? They're probably thinking they probably should have put something Shining related.
Well, even when the novel originally came out, I didn't. The title, I mean, I get it; it makes sense, but it doesn't tell me anything,
They probably could have gone with The Shine, just called it The Shine, or take out the and just call it Shining.
Shining, yeah,
something like that, or I Monday morning quarterbacking, I don't know, maybe The Overlook or something, or
yeah.
I was totally impressed with not only the acting, but the solid writing actually improves upon King's script. It actually gives it an ending. So I really enjoy Mike Flanagan as a director and writer. So
how would you put this in his directing? Like, where would you rank it? Towards the top, you think?
I think so. I mean, the dude just keeps getting better and better.
He does.
Everything.
I think Haunting a Hill House is still his best.
Yes.
But this, I need to rewatch this at least one or two more times pretty soon to see if it tops that for me.
Right.
But it's pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, he just keeps getting better and better, and I'm very envious. What was the other thing I watched that I thought was fairly decent? The Shed. A little low budget.
What's that one about?
It's basically this monster that appears in this guy's shed, and he kind of... It turns out it is a vampire, and he basically starts feeding his enemies to it in a way, So it was kind of cheesy, but it looked great. It was shot very well, but very low budget.
That came out recently. Kind of that sounds like a creep show type of.
In a way,
plot,
kind of like the
plot.
Crate,
Yeah.
And then the other one I checked out was Trick, which I thought was fairly decent, from Patrick Lussier and Todd Farmer.
Yeah.
A little bit of a twist at the end that I was you see a little bit coming, and I don't know, it was a little difficult to get into, but there again, it's well done, and looking back on it, it was like, oh, it was a little better than I thought it would be, so.
That's one I remember, because it didn't come out to streaming until recently, and that seems like you need to watch it around Halloween season type of film.
I definitely think it grasps the Halloween.
Yeah.
So.
I might have to wait till this next October to watch it. The only one I have, because I just frickin' binge watched all of these Universal monster movies that I hadn't seen, some that I rewatched, and the only one I slipped in there was Lucio Fulci's The Beyond.
That's a good one.
This movie is bonkers. If you've never seen the movie, it is basically about this woman who like gets inherits this hotel, and it's basically a seventh doorway to hell. Mm-hmm. And all these demons and zombies all come out in very Lucio Fulci fashion. This dude loves eyeball gore.
Oh, very much so. Which is why
I'm
I
all
have a
for
hard
it.
time watching it.
Yeah. Like, if you think because the only Fulci movie I've seen besides this is Zombie.
Right. That's the one everybody goes to.
Yeah. And I think the eyeball gore is just as good in this one. And there's a scene with tarantulas, too. Oh my god.
It's been years since I've seen that one, but
it's on Shudder right now. That's where I found it. So,
nice.
And then I recommended it to Blake, and he just all he said after it was, "This movie's insane."
Yeah,
I think that's the best way to describe
anything Fulci, though. I mean, the fact that he had a zombie fighting a shark. I mean, how much better can you get?
Top 10 greatest scene of all time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And still to this day, I'm like, how the hell did they pull that off?
Right. Yeah, if you haven't seen The Beyond, go watch The Beyond. It is a bonkers movie. I didn't realize I owned this movie already, because I have it under a different title. It's called Seventh Doorway to Hell.
And it's the one where the little girl gets her head blown off at the end, right?
I didn't watch that, because I watched it on Shudder, and then I'm like, I have the movie.
And that's the thing, I saw a lot of them when I was going through my Italian phase, and there's one, it was, for that time, was extremely extreme because of the fact that they kill this kid in the end. I mean, just totally disintegrated her head, so.
It at least wasn't in this version of The Beyond. I don't know if it's maybe in a different version or a different film. I don't know.
And like I said, could be mixed in could be House by the Cemetery. I don't know.
Terry, have you watched any other stuff besides some Universal monster stuff?
I went through another viewing of is it Jacob's Ladder?
Okay.
Really like that. I'm a huge Silent Hill fan, and that's the movie that inspired it. Just had to look it up. It was on Shudder recently, and it was Demons. Mm-hmm. That old 1985 one. I remember watching that as a kid, and that just messed with my head so much that it's something I will go back. Like, the fact that I found it on Shudder, I was like, oh my god, I haven't seen this in forever. Still holds up to the scares. And, of course, timeless classic Species. That was on Tubi, so I watched that. And I think you or somebody had just posted that they were watching that too, and I was like, oh wow, I'm not the only one. Awesome.
Yeah, Demons is what, Bava?
Yeah, Mario Bava.
Yeah, that movie, the scene that always sticks in my head is the Billy Idol scene. Where they're snorting cocaine in the back of the car to, I think it's Rebel Yell.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I always mix the two, because is it the second one that takes place in the movie theater?
This is the first one.
First one.
Yeah.
The second one is where she watches the movie, and then it comes
right. And the thing is, I watched them back to back, and after a few years, they mixed together a little bit. So.
Yeah, Demons rules. Yeah, if you haven't watched it, go check it out. Shudder's like the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, so we'll jump into Universal Monsters here. Let's start off with a little bit of our history with these movies, because I'm sure with us three we're all horror fans. These were probably some of the first movies we were exposed to, maybe I'm speaking out of turn. I don't know. I remember watching The Wolfman very young. That was the one I was actually, I don't know if I was allowed to watch or if it was on TV and I just kind of snuck it in. I don't know, but that's the one I remember growing up on as a kid.
See, I didn't see them younger, but I did encounter the famous orange monster books from Crestwood when I was in the library. For some reason, those stood out, and I just brought them home, and that was my gateway into horror. So, but then when they started coming out on VHS in 95, 97, somewhere in there, I started picking them up. You know, they would release like a set at a time, and that's where I ended up watching them, as well as in one of the film classes I took. We had to watch films of the 30s, and of course, Frankenstein was one, so Dracula. So kind of hit, that was a prime era for a lot of these movies, so we covered that quite extensively.
Terry, what about you?
Same. I actually started with the books and had those in 4th grade, 4th through 6th. In Worthington, there was West Elementary then, and that's where they had those books, and I'd read those, and then didn't really discover the movies. I mean, I saw clips here and there, but it wasn't until, oddly enough, when Van Helsing came out and they did the Legacy releases, and the first 3 were Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. I remember buying those little the green covered ones because I think they're gray now, but I got those back in college and kind of watched those, and that's kind of where I got my. And also like Ninja Turtles, they did the crossover back when I was a little kid.
Where they fight the Universal monsters?
No, they had the turtles, and they were each.
Oh,
they did a couple years
like,
ago. They were a version of the Universal monster. I remember my favorite was Raphael as the mummy because he was glow in the dark. But
right.
yeah, so through the books and then the toys and then.
Seems like those orange covered books were the start for a lot of people. I don't think my library had them because I keep hearing about them and I've never seen them before.
Yeah, I can still vividly picture them in the library. They were like second shelf up from the bottom, midway, and it was just a stack of them. You know, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Godzilla, and I actually just looked online again. Some of them are going for like over $300.
Oof.
Yeah,
love to get those again. But
one day.
Yeah. Stumble upon them at a yard sale or something.
Yeah, so we're going to jump into this. Since we're doing 3 players, we usually do 2, but we're doing 3 because we want to make this a little bit bigger episode. But what we're going to do a top 12 countdown of the Universal monsters. We set up a little ground rules beforehand. These have to be Universal releases, and we are including all the original films and the remakes. Monsters included, though, are Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, Invisible Man, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and the Mummy. So those are the monsters included, and we'll go from there. So basically what we're going to do, I have the numbers 1 through 3 in a hat. We're changing up the rules here, like I said. So basically what we're going to do is kind of do a zigzag style of our order for our countdown here. And so I'm just going to pass off whatever. If Dom, you want to draw one first, go ahead. Oops, there we go.
As you drop it.
Yeah. You pick. What number did you get? Number 1. So you'll have the number 1 and the number 12, as well as the numbers, I believe, 6 and 7. So those will be your numbers, Terry, if you want to draw one of those. You got number 3, and you will have the picks of, obviously, number 3, number 4, number 9, and number 10. And then I have number 2. I will have the number 2 pick, the number 11 pick, the number 8, and the number 5. So we will, I'll pass these out here. So this is Terry's stack. This is my stack. And Dom, this is your stack.
Okay.
So Dom, you will kick it off. So basically, one more thing, we do need a setup that we do each have a veto. So this veto can be used to either get rid of a movie or if you want to make it higher on the list later on. But with that veto, you have to play something else if someone else plays that veto. You cannot play the same film at the same spot. So, are we ready to get into this? Do you guys have a definitive number 1?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah? Oh. All right. Let's hope it's all on the same page.
Doubtful.
Doubt it. All right. So, Dom, you have the number 12.
Number 12. All right. We'll start with... I had to extend my list out a little bit because I didn't go that far. So, in number 12, I just kind of put and I tended to want to shy away from remakes, but I did really enjoy, what was it, 1999's The Mummy. directed by Stephen Sommers, with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. It's a good Indiana Jones flick. I thought the effects held up at the time. They still kind of do. I mean, the sequel never held up at the time.
Yeah.
And I think we all know about the rock lobster at the end. So
Less talking about the Rock CGI, the better.
yeah, exactly. Even when I saw that in theater, I was like, what?
Because that was 03, 02?
Yeah.
Right in there? Yeah.
And especially as we'll go further down the list, some of the effects that they're pulling off in these films are 10 times better. And then you get something that's made almost 80 years later, and it's like, you can't even pull that off.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed the Mummy. I thought it was a good action romp. It was a lot of fun. But didn't need all the unnecessary follow-ups.
Yeah, the millions of... Because there's only 3 mummies, right, with Brendan Fraser.
Yes.
And then 17 Scorpion King spin-offs or something like that. Yeah.
Because they're cheap.
One came out last year, I think, and it has, like, Lou Ferrigno in it.
Wow.
Yeah. Scorpion King 5 or 6 or something like that.
That's unfortunate.
At least he got a job. That's all right.
Well, yeah.
Terry, how do you feel about The Mummy from 1999?
1999's The Mummy. I actually really enjoy that movie. It does have that... Stephen Sommers, I think, just has whatever team he has for visual effects or whatever it just hurts in everything he does, though. I mean... no, because he didn't do the Scorpion King 2, did he?
He did the first 2 mummies, and then he went to do Van Helsing after.
Just one.
Okay, so yeah, then never mind. He's guilty.
He's guilty of the Rock CGI.
I mean, just real quick, pulling out of everything. I mean, like the Mummy was good. Mummy 2, Rock CGI, perfect example. We jumped to Van Helsing. Again, CGI was just really, really awkward there. And then even G.I. Joe, I mean, that was one of the big things when he did that too. And that was just like basic CGI of like stuff flying in the air. I mean, they've made 30 Fast and the Furious movies doing the same thing, and the CGI is...
He hasn't done anything in a while either.
That's just what I was thinking. I'm like, what has he been up to?
We had a side conversation with the Backlot guys, and we were talking about Stephen Sommers. I'm like, where the hell did he go? And I'm like, he should do a Marvel movie, because I'm like, his style fits Marvel pretty well.
Recently too.
Did he?
I think he's IMDb in them.
Yeah.
Yep. The good old IMDb.
The Mummy, I would probably play this right around here too. I think this is about where I have it. It's the best of the Universal Monster remakes. Easily, in my opinion. Brendan Fraser is really fun. The effects are fine. This was, I think I watched the original Wolfman first, but then this one and the Mummy 2 and the Scorpion King I all watched a lot as a kid. And the scene that has always stuck out with me since then is with the beetles crawling under the skin.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good. I still think that scene holds up pretty well.
So,
and I haven't watched the Scorpion King or this Mummy 2 in a while, so I don't know if those still hold up.
what if I had this higher in my list?
He had
That's
recently
up to
done
you.
Odd Thomas, which was 2013, which was a fairly decent little flick.
Yeah, but he hasn't done in 2013. You said?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's been 7 years. It looks like he's got something else in development, but
Let him do a Marvel movie. Why
Yeah.
not? So Terry, you have this higher on your personal list.
I did.
You have one veto to play,
I don't know if I want
and
to...
that's up to you. Here we are at number 12, though. We have 11 more.
I was going to
picks
say, I
after.
don't know if I really want to play it on the Mummy.
How much do you love the Mummy? Gonna let it stick?
I'm going to let it stick, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I will agree with that. I have the next pick. I probably would have played the Mummy here. So, that is number 12 then. The Mummy 1999. Alright, so I have the number 11. Let's just... this might be where the divide comes in already.
we'll see.
I'm going to kick it off with the one that started it all, 1931's Dracula. Bela Lugosi plays, obviously, Count Dracula in this film, based off the Bram Stoker novel. And, yeah, if you know the story of Dracula, it's the same thing. He is looking for his reincarnation of his bride that he once had, or the woman he once loved. And for this was a first-time watch for me. when I watched it 2-3 weeks ago. I had never seen this movie. I knew all the lines from it, though, because it's obviously everywhere.
Yeah.
This movie's fine. I think it's just fine. I think there's a lot of cinematic qualities that are not present in this film. It feels like the stage play that it's based off of.
Mm-hmm.
The camera is very stagnant. There's not a lot of movement. The scene that sticks out to me in that terms is when it is I think it's Jonathan Harker is saying this, where he's like, look, over there's a wolf running across. I'm like, then show the wolf. Don't just talk about it. Like, it feels very stage during that. Bela Lugosi's great, obviously.
Of course.
I mean, that goes without saying. But, yeah, I think there's just a lot that is missing in this film for me. Especially as the one that started it all. I have 2 more Dracula films that are higher than this. And we'll eventually talk about those probably, but yeah, I think it's a fine start. It's definitely a product of its time, and yeah, Dracula.
Debating about vetoing this because I kind of put myself back in the time span of when it came out in 1931. You know, film was kind of in its infancy yet. You know, it's probably only been around 10-15 years at this point. So I think the fact that it is still somewhat held up, people still steal from it very generously, is kind of a statement to the time that I think it was way ahead of its time. You know, the visuals I thought were really good. I mean, for Bela Lugosi, I mean, it was a career-defining moment. He would never escape the Cape of Dracula ever.
Literally, he's buried in it.
Exactly. So I definitely think this is a lot better film than what you're giving it credit for.
I'm not saying it's a bad movie at all. Have you guys watched it with the score?
No. Not, I would say not in a while. So
okay, I didn't watch it with the score, and I just felt like it was something was missing.
Well, most of these films back in the 30s and 40s are, you know, you kind of got to watch them, and you know, a lot of people like even the most recent remake I could think of is I got into an argument with somebody about It from 1990 saying that it sucked. And it's like, put yourself back in 1990.
For a TV movie.
We never had a Stephen King adaptation of It before. You know, so the fact that you're comparing the two is kind of shouldn't be done. Which I kind of go back to these here too. Nothing before this had been seen before. You know, and it was quite a few years until after.
I have one argument for that, where there's a better Dracula movie that came out before this, and it's a silent film. Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Is a much better Dracula film, in my opinion.
Could just argue with the same. There was a better Dracula film being made at the exact same time.
And that's where I was
infamous
the Spanish
version.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because the set that I got actually included the Spanish version, and it's one of those things where you're just like, you know, like you said, oh, it's of the time and the cam work, and then you see what the Spanish team was doing. You're like, you're getting tracking scenes and moving cameras and everything, and you're like, okay, so this guy was, you know, Todd Browning?
Yeah.
Todd Browning was just kind of like going off his name because he did a few thrillers and stuff at the time, so he was just like, okay, he's gonna do it, and then you have this other guy just like, you know what, I'm making my Dracula movie, and
and they were using all the same sets and equipment and everything,
yeah, because they shot at night.
At night.
Yeah, which is weird. It's like, okay, we'll do it during the day, and you guys, you do whatever you want at night.
Yeah.
But yet they're still telling us the exact same story. Yep. So it is an interesting little thing to see how two different directors interpret the same story. So, all right, I'll leave it. But
Gonna leave it here?
Yeah.
I played it because it has to be on the list. Bela Lugosi's
definitely.
Dracula has to be on here somewhere. He only did it one more time, so it has to be on this list. And maybe you guys will play the other time. I don't know. All right, Terry, you have number 10. Your first play of the game.
My first play of the game, The Invisible Man, 1933. Went with that one, just kind of, like I said, I'll be honest, I thought it was a top 10 list, so I put that on the bottom. I thought it deserved an honorable mention just for the effects that they had at the time. That scene where he takes off the face, where he throws his nose at him and everything. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, like, watching it now, I mean, part of you kind of chuckles, but like the same thing like you said, if you step back, it's like, holy cow, back in the time, that probably just would blow your mind. And then when he starts taking everything off and his whole body's there and he's laughing and he's actually moving, and There's a few, obviously there's a few times where you see it and you're like, oh, okay, and you can kind of see the film over the film or whatever. But then, but there's a lot of times where like it just looks really clean too, and it's just like, that's really good even to today's standards, and something so simple.
And that's what I think is you go back to the audience of 31 who had never seen anything like this, and then suddenly, like with Dracula, you're showing, oh, this is over in Transylvania, and everybody's like, what? That's in Transylvania? I've never been there. They actually, I think legitimately think that.
Yeah.
Because we're still under the time frame of you couldn't actually aim a gun at the screen because people thought you'd be pointing a gun at them. People of the 20s and 30s were apparently stupid back then. But
we're frightened of technology like we are now.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I agree with what you're saying, that the visual, some of that is frightening with the fact that how the effects are being done, and they're doing this over 100 years ago, and it's difficult to pull off today yet. Some of that.
Yeah.
So.
And just a little thing is like come from a theater background, so there's a scene where when he undresses and he's like, I'm gonna mess with the whole town, and he shoves all the stuff off the end of the bar, and then I watched it. I watched a couple clips today before I came through, just kind of get my list right and little things I want to talk about. And there's that scene where he pushes it off, and the actor, the way he acts, like when he's supposed to move, he moves like someone actually bumped into him. And just watching that little subtlety, I watched it a couple times, like, well, let me look at the, and he acts like there really was someone like that shoved him. He just didn't do the move over. I mean, like the body language and everything. And I know that's a weird thing to take apart, but I was like, just that little bit of there, like it really seemed like someone was really there shoving him away.
It's those little things that sell it,
Yeah.
And I don't. It's directed by James Whale, who had done Frankenstein as well. Yep. So I think this was kind of it's kind of it's a man's descent into madness is kind of how it is. So
yeah,
it definitely has his style too.
Yes.
So I had never seen this movie before until now, and this movie's insane for the time.
Yeah,
like it started like the Invisible Man, played by Claude Rains, is an asshole. He's just a jerk the entire time. Like, there's no redeeming quality. He's just an asshole to everyone. It's also really funny.
Yeah.
And I think it's supposed to be, because it's very James Whale.
Yeah, I definitely think it's more of a dark comedy
thing. But yeah, like him throwing the nose. That's a very funny sequence as he's unraveling himself. Yep. It's really funny. Claude Rains is terrifying, though.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like, he's, like, legitimately scared. Like, it's his voice the entire... You don't see him until the final shot of the film. And he's just really scary. Is that maniacal laugh. Just this very deep and menacing voice. And his rants he goes off feel very much of the time and before its time. You will definitely... Because this came out in 1933, there's a certain dictator about 10 years later that was giving very similar rants.
Exactly.
And so this was very ahead of its time. And I think all the special effects hold up really well for this movie.
Yes.
Even compared to the sequels, it's still the best looking of all of them. And I have this one a lot higher.
I do too, and that's where, again, I'm like, you guys are almost going opposite what I have. But...
I have noticed that too. We're all kind of going opposite.
Yeah, I don't know. This is because I don't know, because James Whale is my favorite Universal director of this series. But we have two more that we'll definitely be talking about. I don't know if I don't know. How you feeling, Dom?
Although I disagree with that, I'll leave it here as well.
Yeah, I have other dogs in the fight I want to play, so I think I will leave the Invisible Man. He kills a lot of people in this movie too. He's a legit maniac.
He kills a baby too, doesn't he? Just flips over
the. So yeah, when he's escaping and completely invisible,
I remember that part.
He flips over a baby carriage like a freaking asshole.
So I wonder what James Whale has against kids.
I don't know. There's also, this is a slight spoiler for a movie from 1933. He freaking derailed, he promises at the beginning of the film, we're going to go crazy, we're going to do all this crazy shit. I'm going to derail a train because it's funny. And 40 minutes later, he derails a train and kills a bunch of people.
Yeah.
This guy's nuts. I would have loved to have seen a remake earlier, because I think, Jeffrey Combs would be a fun Invisible Man. I don't know why his name was in my head through this, but yeah, this movie's way ahead of its time. It still holds up very well, so I will also leave it here at number 10 though.
Okay.
Invisible Man. All right, Terry, you have the number 9 as well.
Oh, I have number 9. All right. I have Creature from the Black Lagoon. Just because it was just... was more of the character. I don't know what it is. Since I was a little kid, that was like one of the characters that I remember seeing and just like instantly was... You know, when you're a kid, you see something, you know nothing about it, but you're just like, that's my thing. That was Creature from the Black Lagoon. I was always like, yep, that's my thing. And I just thought he was cool. I know the movie's not the most loved. It's always the one that's kind of like laughed at, where they're like, oh, it's the start of the cheesy...
it definitely, it was 23 years after this whole boom.
Yeah.
So
50,
he was the last
55.
universal.
Yeah. You know, so it was kind of on that downward trend where I don't think anybody found these, well,
Yeah.
even after the Abbott and Costello, where the monsters were jokes now. So
every other franchise was done by this point.
Yeah.
And we were going in a way different direction. I had this
just like, oh, damn it, I had
way
that one
higher.
Yeah. So I wanted to put it higher, but I was also kind of like, there's just things
veto. I'll put it higher.
All right. So Dom will use his veto on Creature from the Black Lagoon. I will applaud that. He should be much higher. So Terry, you will have to come up with a different number 9. Number 9, and we'll talk about Creature from the Black Lagoon a little later.
You're gonna love this one because I'm just bumping my number 8 to number 9, I guess.
Okay.
Little ditty that came out in 2017. The Mummy.
Son of a bitch.
I think it's underappreciated. I honestly do. I think a lot of people just wanted to hate on it. Maybe it was Tom Cruise or what, but because like when I went and seen it, it reminded me of a monster movie. It was a little bit more actiony, but then you can't sit there and say, "Oh, that's a terrible thing." When you look at, as you said, The Mummy was an Indiana Jones movie. So I mean it was playing the same thing, and it was just more modern. And I kind of liked some of the twists that they did. I actually liked how they did the Mummy. I mean, she was frightening. I thought that was cool. Like how she could be like, when there's a scene where she's in the graveyard and she just brings back the dead to fight them. And I was like, that's really cool. It's not like the cheesy bringing back sand mummies and stuff like that. It was literally like using whatever dead was around her to use as her army. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And the little nods to The Mummy, they even hinted, when they were still talking Dark Universe, they were even hinting like it's actually a sequel to those Mummy movies. That's why the book's in there. And I liked the groundwork that they were doing with the Dark Universe, and I'm a huge supporter for Dark Universe. I really wish it would have taken off. And
so does Universal.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to what do you think why it didn't?
Why it didn't? Honestly, I think it was just modern audiences feel like they have to hate on something because
I agree.
It was like, like that was all it was on the internet. Everyone was like, it's not Brendan Fraser, it's not, and it's just like it becomes this like joke to where then it becomes just the thing, and it's just, and like even friends that I had talked to that love those movies, I was like, why won't you give it a chance? Well, it's not that Brendan, it's not Brendan Fraser, and it's like, well, yeah, it's not, but it's its own thing.
It kind of is though.
I'm wondering if maybe they had a different actor. I'm wondering if Tom Cruise isn't.
So I've heard a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff with this movie involving Mr. Tom Cruise. Mm-hmm. This is a movie directed by Tom Cruise, for all intents and purposes, and written by Tom Cruise. So, without having Tom Cruise in either of those positions.
His need for control, I think, is maybe what my feeling was one of the biggest hurdles. Universal
was scared. We need a movie star in this Mummy movie, otherwise no one's going to watch it. Let's get the biggest movie star in the world, Tom Cruise, in this movie. The Mummy herself is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And that scene that you talk about where she's raising the dead out of that graveyard, that's the best scene in the movie. That should have been the movie. Not some mishmash of American Werewolf in London meets The Mummy.
Yeah.
Meets Tom Cruise's Running.
Or
Scream.
Yeah,
Tom Cruise's Scream in that airplane is
They obviously
laughable.
did that to, keep him on the payroll to make the sequels and to build something on it. But I guess like the same thing with Tom Cruise. I mean, I love the Mission Impossible movies. Those are technically directed and written by Tom Cruise, and they're not bad. Yeah. I mean, it was, I guess you could call it Mummy Impossible. Maybe we should just call it that.
That's a good one.
But like I said, it was everything I saw the Mummy 99 before I saw the Mummy 32, 33. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that was the Mummy movie I enjoyed, and I mean, go back and watch the old Mummy. It's still good and whatever, but it's like, so that's what I'm expecting from a Mummy movie. So when I saw it, I was like, okay, it checked all the boxes.
Sure.
Where does this rank about in the Mummy movies for you, though? Is this your favorite Mummy?
It would probably be
Universal
number.
movies?
Honestly, probably number 2.
Behind 99's?
99, this one,
Okay.
and then I'd probably say the original. As like the sequels were really, like Mummy 2 was just it was fun, but it was just so far out there. Like he outruns the sun. Like really, I mean it just really went out there. And then the less we talk about the Tomb of the
was it Tomb of the Emperor?
Yeah.
I never did see it.
The less we talk about that, the more fulfilling your life will be.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh my God! Why would you do this? I don't hate the 2017 Mummy. I was very excited to watch this in the theater because, like you, I wanted a dark universe. I thought that was cool. I'm like, let's get Marvel's doing it, DC's doing it. Everybody wants a shared universe. They did it in the 30s and 40s already. Let's just do it again.
But I think the biggest mistake, one of the biggest mistakes, is the fact that
it's all set up for the other movies.
Well, that's it. But none of these films from the 30s or this universe became its own.
Yes.
Marvel kind of they never banked on, we're doing a universe. This is just one film and then another film and another film. And I think whereas DC and Universal went wrong is that they said we're building a universe.
Yep.
Well, immediately it's like, you mean I got to see like another 30 of them to understand what's going on? No, I'm out.
Yeah. And I think where it goes right for Marvel is they've had a plan for a very long time. This is what we're doing. These are the movies. Leads to this. I think Universal is like, well, what do we have? We got the Mummy. We got the Bride. We have Invisible Man. We'll do those, I guess. What's it going to lead to? I don't know.
Yeah, that was the thing. It's like, you look at it and it's like, what was going to be their game plan? I mean,
right.
Well,
they didn't give it a chance to build it organically.
Mm-hmm.
Is my just kind of like. You set out this slate of 20 films, and it's like, well, we're going to do this one, this one, this one, this one. And it's like, well, you never allow for, well, what if one in your run fails? I mean, because Marvel did. Iron Man 2 is not that good. They were just like, okay, well, we're just going to move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And then they slowly built this world, which I think has almost gotten to be too much because now you got to see this to understand this to understand this. And it's like, and I think that was to side rail a little bit, that was the fault with the new Star Wars, is you had to understand all this other literature going into it before you're like, what? Whereas most movie-going audiences don't want that.
You just want to go to the movie and watch the movie.
I want to see a story.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to do research before I go. So.
Yeah, and then Russell Crowe's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Oof.
Yeah, I think
it's better than the Van Helsing Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Oh, I don't know what to do here, because Terry, you really like this movie.
I really like it.
Okay, and I am afraid you will play it higher if I veto it. But it's.
I'll be honest. I mean, I probably wouldn't play it higher. It's good. It is what it is, but I do think it deserves a spot on the list, but it's just I don't know if I would go past. I would not put it in top 5.
Okay. And you have, what are we at? Yeah, you don't play again till
4
and 3. Okay, we're good. I'm vetoing it then. We are. I'm sorry. This movie can't be on. It may be number 12, but I'm sorry. I can't make the top 10. So I will use my veto on The Mummy 2017. So now you have to play again.
All right, so where are we at? We're at 9.
Still at number 9.
Number 9.
Me and Dom have both used our vetoes for very different reasons.
All right. I try to do a blending of old and new. So at like number 7, I guess is dropping down again. Oh no. Let's see if I have. All right, I'm gonna move some stuff around here. Number 9, I am gonna put on there, and again, I'll argue my point. there's no one got any vetoes left. So
Yeah, this is sticking. This is sticking.
Van Helsing, 2004. Again, it's one of those things where
Damn it.
Okay, I'll just say I'll put it out there. I think the problem with a lot of this, with a lot of things, especially like the Universal monsters and stuff like that. I mean, just like what I guess it's just kind of I look at what are you looking for? I mean, it was a monster movie. Honest to God, like it has a plot that is okay, but it's not executed well. To where honestly, I would have taken the Van Helsing movie and actually used that as the blueprint for the Dark Universe.
Sure.
I think that was their plan
And,
for a while, too.
And in the sense where, like, I like the plot. I like that it's like Dracula is like, hey, you know what? I'm trying to create more vampires, but I can't keep them alive. And then you play into the Frankenstein monster where it's like, wait, Frankenstein figured out how to reanimate the dead, and he's like, I can use that to create more vampires. And it's like, all right, that's really cool. And then they take the whole lore of like the werewolves, and it's just, werewolves just, they hate vampires and vampires hate werewolves, and it's like, okay, that's a cool concept. And they're fighting each other. Like the whole ending of turning Van Helsing into a werewolf, I think was a bit much, but I guess like they had to do something for an action scene. It's Steven Sommers, so I mean, you couldn't just have Van Helsing, who is a brilliant doctor that could have figured something out to fight him. I guess we needed the big showdown. I think, like I said, there's parts of it that were unnecessary, but really, I mean, it was something that, like I said, I think as a movie, it's panned a lot more than it really is, than being accepted in the sense that, like, I feel like people are just watching it to hate on it, to have something wrong with it, instead of just sitting there watching it and going, oh wow, you know what? This is kind of reminding me of a lot of my why I love the Universal monsters. I mean, it's got the creepiness, and but I mean, it does kind of shift a little too much to the action. So I will give it, it's got to be taken to task for.
It's still Steven Sommers.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, there was things I hated about, like I hated what he did with the Frankenstein monster, like some singing. Like that part always drove me mad. Like it was like, why did you do that? Like
because young Frankenstein did it first.
Yeah. So I mean, there's things that I didn't like, but I mean, when it comes down to it, it was just like this plot, and I really liked it. I liked the story. I liked some of the things they were doing with it, and there were some things I didn't. But it was something that was kind of brought. I mean, it wasn't a failure either. And that's the weird thing is, like, it wasn't a failure, and it kind of brought the Universal monsters back to attention. And then Universal was just kind of, I guess, like they wanted to make more out of it. I mean, it made its money back and some. I mean, it made a profit. It wasn't a flop, and they were just like, maybe they just felt like they couldn't sign Hugh Jackman or something. I don't know what was the problem, because they were like, they greenlit a sequel, then they just scrapped everything. So I don't know. I don't know if they just got cold feet or what. And that's the same thing too, like with Dracula Untold. Again, we're gonna do this, do this thing. It wasn't a flop, but then they just again were just like, no, we're gonna go back to the drawing board. And then The Mummy. I think The Mummy was a flop though, so that defeats my argument. But it's just one of those things where it's just it's a movie that just watch it and just enjoy it, and you'll probably be like, oh wow, this really isn't as bad as I was making it out to be. That's my argument. I'll argue it.
We have to let it sit.
Yeah. I remember I didn't enjoy it. I think it tried to be over ambitious. It just tried to throw in too many mythologies and I don't know, and put that action spin on it, and it just I didn't care for it. But you put up a good argument for it, so.
Yeah, there is a couple things I'll pull from your argument that I very much agree with. One, bringing back the monsters, period. Because, I mean, a lot of people were introduced to the classic monsters because this came out in 2004. They were pushing heavy the original Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman during that time. And I think the first 15, 20 minutes are really good. Like, the stuff that's black and white, shot like an old school Universal monster movie is good. And then the rest of the movie happens. Yeah. But I think that opening stuff is better than anything in The Mummy, 2017. So, all right, number 9 then, Van Hellsing. All right. I have number 8 here. All right. All right. So I'm going to go with another Monster Mash type of film here. 1945's House of Dracula. So House of Dracula is technically a sequel to House of Frankenstein, even though it ignores pretty much everything that happens in House of Frankenstein. But basically in this film, Dracula, played by is it James Carradine in this one, and the Wolfman, Lawrence Talbot, played by the great Lon Chaney Jr., they're both looking for cures for their monsterisms. Dracula does not want to be a vampire anymore, and the Wolfman obviously does not want to be the Wolfman. So they are looking both for cures, and who do they go to? None other than a mad scientist that has the Frankenstein monster, and they're looking to basically figure out how they can cure all the monsters of their disease. I think this is one of the better Monster Mash movies of the Universal era. We get Lon Chaney Jr. in the film as the Wolfman, and he's my favorite Universal monster, period. He's my favorite actor of all these films. He's the one that gets to play the most of them, too. He plays everyone but the Invisible Man and Creature, so that's very cool. And the Wolfman is obviously the one he's most known for. It's obviously his best film. The Wolfman and Lawrence Talbot, his alter ego, is very just the most. I think he's the most sympathetic of all these characters.
Right.
And
he was
some may argue Frankenstein's monster, but
I mean, Wolfman was inflicted with a curse he never asked for.
Exactly.
I mean, which is the same as Frankenstein as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything with him in this movie is really good. Like, I enjoy everything about this. The ending is a little lackluster when Frankenstein's monster actually appears and gets to wreak havoc. It's some unused or previously used footage from Ghost of Frankenstein, I think they used footage from. But yeah, this movie's a lot of fun. House of Frankenstein, the one before this, completely misses the point of putting all the monsters together, where the first 20 minutes is Dracula, and then the other 40 minutes or so is Wolfman and Frankenstein. But this movie puts them all together, and they're all in the same scenes together, and they share a lot of screen time. I don't love John Carradine as Dracula. He's no Bela Lugosi, that's for sure, but he's better than Lon Chaney Jr. as Dracula. So he's kind of in the middle if that's the Dracula that we have to get. But the Wolfman alone in this film and the story he goes through and him getting cured and his love story is really good in this movie too. So.
I didn't realize between House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula there was only a 4-month spread.
Yeah.
Which for the 40s is pretty damn impressive.
Pretty fast to put out a movie.
Yeah. So they must have either been working on them at the same time or...
It's all the same character. Yeah, they're all the same actors, playing the same characters.
And I think that about this time is when it was starting to hit the tail end. I mean, you're basically 14 years after the big boom. So I think maybe they were just rolling them out.
I think House of Frankenstein was one where they literally were writing it as they were shooting it.
It feels like that.
I think that's what that one was, where they were just like, we need it out. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, I'll direct it, write it, we'll just get what we can.
And I wonder if they started at some point to switch, saying, let's just start aiming these towards a much younger audience, you know. Mm-hmm. Obviously, with the Abbott and Costello years, that was
soon after, not like really close after, isn't it? Because
Within
this was 45.
Years,
so that. Let me see.
Yeah,
so
this is in the thick of the monster mashups. Wolfman or Frankenstein meets the Wolfman is
pretty much
the start of it. That was what
43.
43.
So you're 2 years after that.
Yeah,
so it was just like it would be interesting to go back to that time and just kind of see how they were rolling out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do we feel about House of Dracula here at number 8? Terry, you only had the last veto left.
I will not argue it.
Okay. Dom?
I'm good.
House. Do you like it better than House of Frankenstein?
A little bit, just probably because of the reasons you said. It did feel like House of Frankenstein was more of a 2-part, you know.
Yeah.
They didn't bring them together.
I like Boris Karloff in House of Frankenstein, though.
Yes.
where he actually gets to play the mad scientist this time. That's fun.
Yeah, and there again, I'm curious to delve into the history of why.
Wait, he didn't just play the monster?
Yeah.
Or play both?
Right, or, just kind of like, why did they change him up, or... I know Boris Karloff was never a fan of playing the monster because of all the makeup they had to do, so maybe that was part of the reason.
I'm assuming that's it, or because that's his last Universal film, I think, as far as the monster films go.
The monster films, I think he did...
So maybe he was like, I want to play the Doctor this time.
Yeah, the monster, like, who's the guy that played the monster? He got a lot of praise, too, because basically Karloff was just like, this is how you're doing it.
I think Glenn Strange at some point.
Yes, he was the monster in those two. Yep.
Yep.
And he is given nothing to do, but he's...
Technically the Frankenstein character, the Frankenstein monster is... There's not much to do with him. He just...
I'll argue that in a different movie.
Well, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, all right, number 8, House of Dracula. We get to number 7. Dom, you have number 7 here.
I have 7?
Yes, you do. And 6. So you're going to get 2 in a row here.
Number 7, I have Frankenstein meets Wolfman. Just because I think it was the first time that they brought them together. It was kind of the Freddy versus Jason of its day. It's like somewhere along the lines they got the idea of, hey, let's meet these two together. Now I do feel it ends very anticlimactically, and its running time is maybe 65 minutes.
I was going to say, though, I think that's just Universal. I'll be honest. I feel it's just Universal's thing. Like, they didn't know how to end anything.
Yeah.
Like, every movie
all
is just
the
kind of
endings
like...
are the same. They either all the monsters just die, or there's a couple kissing in front of the sunset.
Yeah.
Or sunrise.
Yeah. I think what is these two, they're fighting, and then the castle falls apart, and that's it. So it kind of leaves it very open-ended. But I enjoyed it because, of the fact that they do bring the two together. And like you said with Lon Chaney, I always thought his character has always been one of my favorites as well. Just he is the more sympathetic, and I think teaming him up against Frankenstein was awesome.
Yeah, this is the one I did not watch because it was not on any of the box sets that I have.
Really?
It wasn't in the Frankenstein one. I don't have the Wolfman one, so it might be on that one then. Yeah, I'm really excited to watch this movie though. Because from what I've heard, it's the best of the monster mashes in terms of quality. Where it has more than one monster in it. Yeah. Because is this Glenn Strange's Frankenstein still?
It might be one of his first.
Because that's the only thing that I wish would have happened back then is I wish we had Karloff, Lugosi, Chaney all in one movie.
Yeah, which
playing their iconic monsters.
I don't think. Yeah, we never do.
No. So yeah, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, 1943, number 7. Dom, you also have number 6 then.
This is where I put in Creature from the Black Lagoon. Even though I do feel it needs to be a little bit higher, I do, I really enjoy it. It's the fact that they go on this Amazon cruise and, well, not really a cruise, expedition I should say, and that suddenly this creature starts, attacking them. And I use that loosely because he just more strangles them, puts his big gills or fingers around them. Yeah, to go back, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman is on the Wolfman set, so.
I will have to find that one.
Yeah. Creature's always been one of my favorites. Like, you mentioned earlier, Terry, but you just see that and it's like, that's the one. That was kind of mine too. It was just like something about the fact that he wasn't a human, it was just a creature. I do feel in the subsequent sequels they kind of ruined him a little bit by making him
a human almost.
Yeah, almost a human-fish hybrid. But it was Clint Eastwood's first film, so you can't, But so my number 6 was Creature from Black Lagoon.
Yeah, this is probably right where I have Creature too, right here at 6, 5 or 6 is where I have it. This movie is quite the anomaly with the rest of the monsters because he's not sympathetic, but yet he very much is because it's basically a love story between him and Julie Adams, which works really well. But you also you do want to see them end up together, but she also has a very loving boyfriend, husband, whatever he is in the film too, and you really like him. It also has a lot of stuff that's used in modern day movies with a love triangle where she's on this expedition with her boyfriend, husband, whatever it is, and then another dude that she used to date or he mentored her. There's a little sexual tension there between them as well, but he's an asshole, so we don't like him, obviously.
Well, yeah,
he's more of an asshole than the creature, so yeah, but there's that, obviously all the underwater stuff in this movie is so good, like for 54. Yeah, James Cameron keeps talking about his underwater stuff. I'm like, they did it in 54, dude, like,
right,
just
with
do
a
it
lot
again.
less technology.
Yeah,
I mean, the cameras were huge, so you figured they had to waterproof those suckers, and then to get everything to line up,
And who's the creature in this? Because I think it's two different people for above water, and I think there's a stunt actor for the underwater stuff.
Yeah, it's whoever.
That's kind of like that's an anomaly thing, isn't it? Like who actually played the creature?
No, I'm just gonna say it. Why is Universal not throwing money at James Cameron to remake Creature from the Black Lagoon?
Because Benicio del Toro did and won an Oscar for it.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I think that's. If that was on this list, I think that's the greatest Creature of the Black Lagoon movie, The Shape of Water.
I was gonna say that earlier.
Yeah, it is. It's a fantastic film, and we would not get an Oscar-winning monster movie if it wasn't for Creature from the Black Lagoon from 1954. So
yeah, nobody's listed as the creature, but they didn't keep very good records back then either. It was just kind of like,
Hey, put on the suit quick?
Basically.
Yeah, but all the stuff with the creature underwater, like that, like I want to know how they shot it with him in the suit. That's what I want to know, because obviously with the scuba divers they have the scuba gear on.
Right.
Did he have some sort of breathing, or is he holding his breath for?
I think he might be holding, because there's a lot of.
Sucks.
Yeah, there's a lot of the shots. Yeah, I mean just the shots underwater with the fact that the lighting still looks great.
And because I just rewatched this morning. And there's no like bubbles that come out of the creature's mouth either, so he has to be holding his water for that long too.
Oh wow, because even now when they do like underwater stuff, there's a breathing apparatus that they usually CGI out to, because they're so bulky.
Or there's like a crew right off
right there,
camera, just
yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think you can do that with the mask or whatever, the makeup and mask.
I don't. The mouth did stick out a bit. Maybe it was.
It did, yeah.
I wonder if it opened underwater though. I don't know. That's crazy. Like that's the I want to see. There has to be a documentary about that somewhere.
There's probably a number of unknown stuntmen dead right now, and
they're just in suits. They're in the Black Lagoon.
Universal just like, just leave them there and they won't float.
All right, awesome. I'm glad Creature is right here at 6. That's a good spot for it. All right, number 5 is me. All right, number 5. I teased this earlier that a Dracula movie would be higher than 31. 2 Dracula movies. I already played one of them. The next one I have is 1936's Dracula's Daughter.
I did not see that one.
So a very forgotten sequel within the Universal monsters, and a very forgotten monster, unfortunately. Gloria Holden plays the Countess Dracula's daughter. Takes place pretty much right after the first film, where they open with the ending of that film where Van Helsing is driving the stake through his heart. Mm-hmm. But this movie, it follows it's pretty much a very similar concept, obviously, except when she is looking for like this lover or something, it's always women. And that was very ahead of its time for 1936. This is a lesbian vampire movie, and
there again, putting yourself back in that time.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this Universal monster movies that's way ahead of its time in terms of what was going on in the United States or the world at the time. And this is one of those where I think Gloria Holden, like, she feels like Bela Lugosi's Dracula's daughter. Like, she has the same mesmerizing way she presents this character, and she has a very similar look in her eyes that Lugosi did to hypnotize her victims and stuff. And there's this great scene where she hires this model for her, and the model, like, it's very revealing too for the time. The model like starts peeling her clothes off, sexually, very sexually, and like she turns around and there's Dracula's daughter and attacks her. I'm like, that's for 1936, that's way ahead of its time. And I think that's why I have it so high, is because the stuff it was presenting and the ideas it was presenting are still very present today. And if they will, like, this is the Dracula I want them to remake. Like, it brings in all the mythology with Van Helsing and Dracula, and Dracula's wives and everything, and it feels like a movie that could be made today because it deals with social topics of today, and it also, we brought up this Dr. Sleep earlier. This has a very similar ending where like the ending ends up at Dracula's castle because they're not there the entire film, and that's where it goes full circle back to the castle.
Interesting. It's been a long time since I've seen this one, so I'll have to check that out. But that is one of the things that I like about the Universal monsters is the fact that they're always. It's almost like they're a symbol of something else. You know, I mean, and that's, you know, you go through that film history and you learn that about what was going on in the world, and then, you know, when you're so far removed from it, you don't see that. You see it in a very different light. But during that time, people saw it very differently. So, that's interesting. I'll check that out.
Yeah, and I think it's the best of the series, as I said. So, Dracula's Daughter, number 5. All right, here we are. We are in the top 4 here. Terry, you have your last 2 picks back to back.
Back to back. All right, number 4, I'm going to actually put in The Wolfman, 1941.
I was hoping it'd be higher, but I used my veto.
All right, The Wolfman.
The Wolfman. It's a good film. It's another one that with abrupt ending. I liked how I actually watched that one before I came here again because I liked that one. So there's just little parts of it that I like, and especially the one thing I like about the monster universe is like this weird parallel universe where like you can take something like a werewolf or whatever, and it's not debated. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a werewolf out there, and nobody's like, are you sure? You know, everyone's like, okay, there's a werewolf. Let's take
Everybody grab the pitchfork. Let's go.
As I was watching them, there's an invisible man. Run away. Like, just, they all accept it no matter what. Yeah, you're right. There's Dracula. He's there.
Yep.
There's an undead monster. He's there. Grab your pitchforks and torches. Let's go.
Yeah, like,
It wasn't, where's your proof?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's none of
They
that.
accepted everything.
They just accepted it, and they were like, all right, well, we gotta work around with it. So.
Yeah. What's the plot of The Wolfman?
The plot of The Wolfman?
For people that haven't seen it.
All right, so Lon Chaney's, what's his name?
Lawrence Talbot.
Lawrence Talbot returns to his homeland, and he's just...
After his brother dies, I think he's returning. I think it's his brother.
Well, the thing with that too is like they tie into like having their family struggling with mental illness because they talk about that later. He returns and then he gets infatuated with that lady, the shopkeeper or whatever. So he's all
Hitchcock
head over heels
Mm-hmm.
over her, and then ends up finding about the wrong time, I guess, like when the gypsy becomes the werewolf.
Played by Bela Lugosi.
And so he just happens to be wrong place, wrong time. Kills the werewolf with a little silver staff. You know, playing on the silver can kill a werewolf, and gets bitten, and then he gets the curse. And the nice thing about that too is again they build up to it. It's not like he's just like, I'm the werewolf. I mean, it's like slowly transforming. I like how they play the whole thing too, where they talk to him too, and they're like, "Oh, maybe you just hypnotize yourself." And he's like, "What are you talking about? How can I just hypnotize myself?" And they play like they talk to him about that, and he kind of storms off. And then when it's just his father and the doctor there, they talk about it, and they're like, "Well, your family struggles with mental illness. You know, like he might be suffering from it too." So I mean, just that little bit, and again, like you said, so like progressive for what it was. 1930.
41.
19,
yeah.
Was it 41?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 41 in my notes there. So I mean, 1941, they're discussing that, like, hey, mental illness, and like he's he's out and about with this without, with unchecked, and we're not telling him, and we need to convince it, let him know like this is what's really going on. But then the town people are like, no, it's a werewolf, and everyone's like, oh yeah, we accept it. It's not mental illness. And then it's not. I mean, it is the werewolf. But I mean, like, the fact that they play that too, like there's underlying things going on in that family. And, the family, the father, played by Claude Rains, is just kind of like, oh, no, like, we're okay. He's not, that's not it. There's something else going on. And, it just turns into a wolfman, goes after the little town's lady, and ends up getting killed by his father. And they say face at the end where they're just like, oh, it wasn't.
Yeah.
He killed the wolf. He's the hero.
Yeah.
And again it just laugh at it again, seeing it just the abrupt ending where she's like, oh my god, she like goes into the guy's chest and that's it. Mm-hmm. The end. And it's like,
I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of. I can't think of ones that just like nail the ending really hard. I don't know. We'll have to think about it. Maybe talk about one later. I don't know. The Wolfman is my favorite of all these movies. This would be my number one. As I said, Lon Chaney Jr.'s Wolfman is my favorite character in these movies.
Yep.
He's so sympathetic, and Lon Chaney Jr. is so good in this role. Like, he just fits into it so well. Not only just playing the character of Lawrence Talbot, but also the look and the feel of the Wolfman and his just those under the teeth that stick out underneath are so iconic now. And yeah, even the love story aspect is really good. It's kind of like it could have been creepy with him spying on her, but I think it toes the line very well. And I do like all the stuff from the beginning where they do go to the gypsies and the woman gets her hand read and there's the emblem on her hand. Yep. And that means you're the next one. So, and I like how when he's fighting Bela Lugosi's werewolf, that it's like, is it a wolf? Is it a dog? Is it a man? Like, he doesn't even know what he's fighting. He's just attacking. He's just getting whatever's attacking this woman off. Yep. So, yeah, the Wolfman.
Definitely one that has, I think, the most atmosphere. At least,
definitely has the most fog.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the other ones, it was always like castles or, tombs, whereas this one's like out in the woods. Mm-hmm. It's almost the more realistic one. And it's weird that it kind of came in the middle of, they were kind of doing sequels to the other ones, and then it's like, oh, here's a new character, so kind of interesting that it, just the way it came about. I would be curious to see if there's any, I know there's like werewolf lore before that, but what did they do to adapt it? Because it's kind of like, these films all set up like the rules that we're still following now, with the silver and the moonlight and all that, so it'd be interesting to see
what was before that, or what they came up with.
It's funny that you guys say that. I was actually thinking about that. Like, I don't think there really were a lot. I mean, I think they were creating the genre. They were just like whatever they wanted it to be, and now, to be honest, I feel like a lot of movies now feel handcuffed to it, where it's like, why do you need to?
Mm-hmm. You can't just be creative and be like, this wolf is allergic to sunlight, or
peanuts.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's kind of looked at as that's not realistic, but yet this was one of the the rule maker of the wolves then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess there was Werewolf of London before that.
Yeah. This is also the only one of the main monsters that doesn't get a direct sequel.
No,
like, no Wolfman, he becomes the guy in Frankenstein meets the Wolfman in Dracula's house and Frankenstein's house.
No son of Wolfman.
No.
Yeah. No daughter of Wolfman. Yeah. Nephew of Wolfman.
Yeah, I think, Lon Chaney is he's so good in all these movies too. Like, the one I kept thinking, I'm like, I want a Lon Chaney Jr. like biopic, like about making all these movies, and I was trying to think of who would play Chaney Jr.
He was super tall from what I remember.
And the one that kept sticking in my head, and this would have been cool, like back in the 80s, was Tom Atkins.
Yeah.
He kind of looks like, especially when Chaney later has the mustache, he looks like Tom Atkins with a mustache. So, number 4 then, the Wolfman. All right, Terry, you do have the number 3 as well. Your last pick in the game.
I don't feel like I'm really good at this game. Like, everything I kind of pick, I'm just kind of feel like groans. Like,
terrible.
As long as you don't play The Mummy in 2017 here, I think we'll be good.
The Mummy No, I'm just kidding. A little film from 2017. No. This one, I put it number 1 because this is I've watched this on VHS since I was a little kid. This is what made me... I guess this is what is the foundation of my love of all things monsters. Universal, I should say. And it is going to be Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I think that's, of all the ones that they've done, they do have their shticks in there that have to be in there for an Abbott and Costello movie, but I think it's the one that shows the most love and respect for the characters. where like I don't know, Mummy was this really really slapstick like zany, where I feel like Meets Frankenstein was like Lon Chaney, like he Talbot, and that was still really like he just plays it really well. Like the part where he asked to lock himself into a hotel room. And just like it's serious, like it's not silly. He's just like, look, I know what's gonna happen to me, and I need to just be here, and just I don't want to be that. I hate that I have to be that. So I mean, there's still like this depth and this respect and like ties to what we got, and like there's still like there's Abbott Costello. I love Abbott Costello. It's my favorite comedy duo too. But I mean, I just feel like it that's the one where they're just like, you know what, we love these characters. We want to do something with them. We're gonna do it. It's Dracula has Frankenstein's monster, and he just wants to find a new brain for it so that it can live. And I think it's my favorite, and it's the thing, like I said, it was probably built the foundation on it. Like I guess like I edged out the foundation with those orange books, and then filled in the cement with Abbott Costello, and I was like, "There's the foundation," and then everything has been built on
it.
Yeah, I've caught parts of it. It's one of those things I have not sat down to watch it just because of I don't want to take the monsters in a comedic route. But I have seen parts of it at a film festival, and I did enjoy what I saw. And like you said, they're treating them with respect. It's not that they're, going against character type. Yeah. They're still keeping those characters' integrity, but yet also introducing them into a more comedic world. So.
Yeah, I haven't watched any of the Abbott and Costello meet Invisible Man, Frankenstein, The Mummy.
I've only seen The Mummy and Frankenstein and parts of was it the Strangler or something like that.
There's Frankenstein, Invisible Man, Dr.
They
Jekyll,
meet
and Mr.
Boris
Hyde.
Karloff.
Yeah, Boris Karloff. Yep, and then.
Where he plays himself, I guess.
I've seen clips of like I guess like in like I said, Abbott Costello is my favorite comedy duo. So there's like when you see like when you watch like their highlight clips, things that come out like highlights, they'll reference like jokes that they do in the movies. So I've never really seen the full other ones, but I've seen little jokes that they've done for them. And like I said, just even that, like I said, I find the humor. But it's like you said, like they're kind of become the joke. Where Frankenstein was just like Dracula was Dracula. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It wasn't like ooh. It was more like
also Bela Lugosi's return.
Yeah, his return.
It's the only other time he's ever played Dracula. His only other time
he played him, so they brought him back for that. And like I said, he was Dracula in it. It wasn't just like a silly character. It was like, oh, this is Dracula, and then the Frankenstein's monster was Frankenstein's monster, and Talbot, Lon Chaney's character was, his Talbot, or was it? Mm-hmm. He's him, he's him in the sense that it's like he's trying to do good, but he knows he has this curse. But when he turns into the Wolfman, like he's nobody's friend anymore. So I mean, they still play all of that up, and even then, with they have some of the laughs and stuff, but they still have that horror element, like where they're, it's kind of a scene that. They do, and it's got humorous parts to it, but it's still creepy where they're trying to get away from the monster, and they're shutting the door, and all of a sudden, boom, his hand comes out, and he grabs Costello's head, and he's like, oh, and they run away from him, and they do a little joke where they hide, and then they turn around, and Dracula's trying to get away from Wolfman, so he busts through the other door, and they're like, oh no, and it's like, I don't know, it still has that horror element that.
Where Abbott and Costello are the funny people in this weird
in the world, right?
In the world of the monsters.
Where the monsters were the straight man, and then Abbott Costello were the funny, or the characters, yeah. So, like I said, I had to put it at the top of my list, and since I don't have number one, I had to move it as high as I could get it.
I'm excited to watch that one. It's the one I'm looking forward to the most that I haven't seen yet.
It's really good.
All right, so we're down to our final two. Dom, you said you had a definitive number one. Have we played that number one?
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. Now I got to decide which one of these two is your number one. All right. I have one that I think is the number one.
The Mummy?
Yes, from 2017. I'm going to go with 1931's Frankenstein. Directed by James Whale. Everybody knows the story because it's just the story of Frankenstein and his monster. You all know the story. What works so well in this, though, is the grand scale of this movie. Like, this movie is, like, I think of all the movies, this is the one this and another one hold up more than any of the other ones because of what is set up in this movie. It sets up all the things you know and love about Frankenstein and his monster, but then those sets are so massive, and Whale uses all of it too. And what really works is Colin Clive is really good as Dr. Frankenstein, and Boris Karloff is just killer as the monster. Just the iconic reveal of it and how Whale goes about shooting it is so. It's so strange why he, like, I want to know the choices he was thinking in his head when he used the jump cuts to reveal the monster, because he backs in through the door, you don't see him, he turns around slowly, and then it's a pretty wide shot, and then medium, and then close up, and they're all different angles too. I'm like, why did you choose to shoot it that way? But it's a very great reveal of Karloff's monster. It's so good, and the makeup is fantastic. And
I think there was a lot of German influence amongst around that time. You know, which because James Whale, I mean, maybe he came. I think he came from German cinema, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll look him up. I don't know.
He was also unusually a very open gay man during that time, which they have looked at it years later and thinking that maybe there was some sort of subtext with the whole Frankenstein's monster, but. Because that was really unusual for that time, but yeah.
He was born in England.
Okay.
So maybe he was. I mean, he could still. He was on that European side. Definitely had that European influence. Yeah. So Frankenstein, 1931. Like, there's everything that's been said about this movie has been said. Yeah,
and here again for 1931, they're pushing buttons with the fact that he actually kills a little girl. More out of his own curiosity, which I think it was cut out when it came out in 31, and it wasn't restored till many years later. But the fact that he throws that little girl in the water just to see if she can float.
It's such a great scene too.
It is.
It's so It's like it's touching, and then it's like, oh my god.
Right, because he doesn't understand himself. He's trying to understand the world around him. So, hey, these flowers are floating. Can you float? Toss her in.
And then the scene after with the dad carrying her lifeless body. I'm like,
that's even more horrifying because the fact that when they cut away, in the original version they cut away so where you don't see him throw the girl.
Yeah.
And then also you cut to this guy carrying this girl, and that's more horrific because it's like, what did he do? Mm-hmm. So I think when they restored that little addition, it softened it a little bit, which is weird.
There's another iconic scene where they don't cut it out, but they dub over it, is when he's yelling, I know what it feels like to be God.
Right.
And like, that's blasphemy at the time. Like, you can't be saying stuff like that. Yeah. Whale's like, no, I'm saying it, I'm doing it. And that's such an iconic and great line, and the fact that they now have put it back in, I think works so well.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and like I've mentioned many times, you put yourself back in 31. These movies are truly terrifying.
I still think this movie is very, like, the scene with everything with the little girl and the dad carrying, like, that's still scary, and all the monster stuff is really good.
Yeah. It is one of a little side trivia note is the fact that everybody thinks the assistant's name is Igor, and it's not. It's actually Fritz. So where Igor comes about, I don't know.
In Son of Frankenstein.
Yeah,
but it's spelled with a Y and not an I. Okay. Igor. Bela Lugosi is that henchman.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So Frankenstein, 1931.
I kind of had my top one kind of interchanged between
that and
then the 1932 Mummy. No, I'm kidding.
2017 Mummy.
I was scared. All right, number one then is...
It's obviously the big one. It's Bride of Frankenstein. The sequel to the original that improves upon it. At this point, Frankenstein has explored more of life. He wants a partner. He's lonely in this world where he's a monster and everybody else looks at him as a monster. So he wants a mate. So Dr. Frankenstein makes him a female mate. and it doesn't quite go the way he wants. So.
Yeah, I love how this movie opens up with Mary Shelley telling the story of Frankenstein, like how she actually came up with the story during when she was with her husband and his friend. Is what it was,
she
and they were
like
telling
19 when she created the story.
Yeah, and they were
like
sharing scary stories, and this is what she came up with, and I love how that's the opening, and the actress plays the bride again.
Elsa
Lanchester.
Yes.
Yeah, and she also plays Mary Shelley in the beginning.
Yes.
It picks up right at the end of Frankenstein, 1931, and both the monster and Dr. Frankenstein somehow survive that iconic ending at the windmill. This movie has, like Dom, you said, it improves upon, but it's also a very good companion piece to the first film. All the stuff James Whale was putting in the first film is enhanced in this one.
Yeah,
Because
here again, Whale, returns to direct, and you definitely put his, it's been 4 years, so he obviously learned a few things, so he puts a new style on it. And it's one of the first female monsters to come about until Dracula's daughter a couple years later. So.
Yeah, this movie, I love this movie. Dr. Pretorius is like one of my favorite characters that they never use again after this. He's obviously used the same name is used later on in the film from Beyond. There's a Dr. Pretorius in that movie, so there's a lot of influence in those Lovecraftian movies later on in the 80s. But this movie, there's the scene with Frankenstein's monster, and he comes across the blind man in his cabin. And I think that's the greatest scene in any Universal monster movie, period, where the blind man doesn't care. He can't see what the monster looks like, but he can tell he can't speak very well, and he's teaching him all these things like smoke good, drink good. You feel so bad for the monster during that too, and he starts playing the blind man starts playing this music, and Karloff just starts the tears down his eyes. I'm like, oh my god. This is the only monster movie I've cried during. It was during that scene when you see the monster cry. I'm like, oh my god.
Well, yeah, because he's
touching.
Discovering what it's like to be a human. He's made up of all these parts, and now suddenly he's,
gets to really feel what it's like to be a human and feel emotion for once. And then it's if you just leave the monster alone, let him be. But then later, some two villagers see the monster, take the blind man, burn down his house, and destroy both of their lives at that point. And the monster then wants a companion. That's where we get the bride part of it. I also love Dr. Pretorius's little people that he's growing. It's so weird, and I don't know what it's going on, and I find it very funny. But it's also It's great special effects for the time, though. The stuff they were using. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And there's a lot of gay subtext in this movie too with James Whale, especially with Dr. Pretorius. He's very, very flamboyant. I'm pretty sure he is gay as well. Just the way he carries himself, and he gives the line to Frankenstein's monster where he wants a smoke, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's my one weakness." Just the way he says it, it's so charming. Yeah. And the way he's the reveal of the bride at the end, and he puts his hands down, it's like the bride of Frankenstein, and there's the wedding chimes. Oh, this movie's great.
And the bride's not actually in it a whole lot.
Yeah, she's in it for a minute.
Yeah. It's basically the iconic vision that you see, and then
ending. Yeah.
Shit goes wrong.
All right, Terry, what do you think of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein?
I have no complaints. I mean, I could never be invited again and veto when we go at the Mummy 2017. and
Van Helsing.
And then suddenly it's like, you don't talk about monsters anymore. What about that list? It never happened.
Yeah.
Deleted all of the... No, it's that... I will be honest, Bride of Frankenstein, it's probably the most iconic of the monster movies. Just the bride, the reveal, and preparing for this, watching the movies, there's a really great documentary. It's like 2 hours and something on YouTube. It's really good. I had to watch it a few times because it's good, but they get long-winded. There's a few times where you gotta nod off and you're like, oh, I gotta go back.
Is that the one Kenneth Branagh is narrating. Is that the one you were?
It's one of those things that around Halloween I always intend to go down the rabbit hole and watch all this stuff, but each disc has got like a 2-hour documentary about each film, and I'm just like, it's gonna suck my time away.
Yeah, but it's they talk about how Bride of Frankenstein is probably, the one that's the best. It's probably the most well done, and I think James Whale's had a lot of his heart into it. I don't know if you ever saw the movie God and Monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about that too. He hates it because in a sense I think it was because he feels like typecast or whatever. But he also just like it was his vision. It was his, everything was his.
Yeah, because he takes a lot of stuff from the original novel, but the bride really isn't in the original book, is she?
Yeah,
she's like towards the end, and they never reanimate her, right? From what I remember,
in the original book, she is, because that's in the book. The monster is not as sympathetic. He's really is a monster, and I mean, it's more of a nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
And because he creates him, and then Frankenstein's like, "Oh my God, what did I do?" And he like shuns him and throws him out into the world, and he doesn't know why he knows what he is, but he demands. He can talk. He learns a lot of things, and he demands a partnership because he comes back and he's just like, hey, you know what? I realized that like I need companionship, and so he tells him, he's like, make me my bride, make me a female, and you know what? I'll take her and we'll go away, and we'll just never bother humanity again. And so Frankenstein's like, he's all messed up. He's he can't believe what he did, and he's destroying him. And he's like, you know what? If I do this, he'll leave me alone, and we'll just get, I can get my life back and live my life. And he goes and he makes it, and then he realizes, like, wait, what if she can have children? What if I make all these monsters? Like, and if he ever if he ever decides to go back on his word, nothing can stop him.
Screwed.
So he destroys the bride, and Frankenstein, or the monster, just says, all right, if that's how you want to play this game, I'm going to take everything away from you, and he kills his bride. So it's, and the Kenneth Branagh, they do that, and they do a little twist on it at the end of their movie. But
yeah, there's two more things I want to bring up for Bride of Frankenstein. Colin Clive is great again as Dr. Frankenstein. Actually sympathetic this time, where he's kind of just not in the first film.
Right.
He's just a mad scientist. This one, he's very much, because he's like Dr. Pretorius is the evil version of him on his shoulder, saying, "Come back, let's make a bride together. We can do it. We can improve upon what you did." So he's great in the film and given more character. And there is like some Jesus Christ subtext in this movie too, where the monster is literally crucified on, not a cross, but he's on a big pole, where James Whale treats the monster like Jesus. I'm like, wow. It's so much stuff in this movie.
Yeah, knowing that James Whale was a gay man, it's like, was he taking out his own aggressions, on this creature, basically?
Yeah. So, yeah, there it is. Number 1, Bride of Frankenstein. We'll get to honorable mentions here. I'm going to run through the list of our top 12 Universal monster films. Number 12, The Mummy, 1999. Number 11, Dracula, 1931. Number 10, The Invisible Man, 1933. Number 9, Van Helsing, 2004. Number 8, House of Dracula, 1945. Number 7, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, 1943. Number 6, Creature from the Black Lagoon, 1954. Number 5, Dracula's Daughter, 1936. Number 4, The Wolfman, 1941. Number 3, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, 1948. Number 2, Frankenstein, 1931. And number 1, Bride of Frankenstein, 1935.
I like that hat trick for Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Right there at the end, yeah. I think that's kind of the Frankenstein and Wolfman were the ones that dominated this list for the most part. So
I think that the two most, like we talked about, sympathetic characters.
Yeah.
I mean, Dracula is not sympathetic because he is what he is.
Just a jerk.
The same thing with the Mummy, and although I enjoy the Mummy, they're very slow paced even for that time.
Yeah.
All right, what do we got for honorable mentions? Do you guys have any other ones that would have possibly made the list besides the Mummy 2017? I have 2 different mummies that I would put on. towards the end here. Obviously, we didn't talk about the original Mummy, 1932, Boris Karloff. I think it's fine. Like again, with I think Dracula is better. Karloff's really good in the movie, but it's really slow paced.
It's a mummy that's shambling after you.
Yeah, and Karloff's not in the Mummy makeup besides the opening,
right?
Which is great makeup, but. And then one I have right above that is the sequel, The Mummy's Hand. I think is better because there's actual main characters to the film. It gives us the iconic mummy with the one arm chasing after them. This is The Mummy's Hand is the template for Brendan Fraser's The Mummy, where it's a group of like archaeologists or people discovering the mummy's tombs, and they come across a different mummy in this one, Karis. So yeah, that's my two honorable mentions.
The only one I had that was the Spanish version of Dracula, which we briefly talked about.
Yeah, the only other that's pretty much what I would have. Son of Dracula is my number 13 on my list, so that would have been a possible contender. I think Son of Dracula is pretty good. It's the longest I think of all the Universal monster movies, the original ones, because it's hour 40. It's pretty long. It's pretty long.
That's like a 3-hour nowadays.
Yeah, it'd be a epic directed by Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
I think Son of Frankenstein's really good. I think that is one where they take the most from when you go to Young Frankenstein, where they take this obviously the son element and they're relatives of the original Dr. Frankenstein. In this case, it is literally his son from. The wife that he has, and I think it's really good. There's a lot of stuff playing on like legacy and what's your legacy, what do you leave behind type of stuff. It doesn't go full into it, but I don't think the monster is definitely not as sympathetic. He's just a jerk in this one. And I think it's a good movie. It's worth a watch, and this is where we get Igor. So
remember Ghost of Frankenstein was fairly decent, but. It's been licensed quite a few years.
Yeah, so that is the list. I think it's a pretty good list.
Yeah,
we did pretty good
with that.
Yeah. Oh, the other one we wanted to talk about was The Old Dark House. Is one I think I put it as a monster movie. It is a Universal film, also directed by James Whale. Again with Boris Karloff in a monstrous role, except he's not a supernatural monster. He's just a drunk. Like, if he gets drunk, he kills people. Oh. It's a really fun movie. It's on Shudder right now, too. That's where I watched it a few months ago. Yeah, so if you haven't watched that, it has the James Whale style of comedy as well. But it's also just very well shot and very dark and uses the same style of Frankenstein, but set in a more modern time with that one.
Interesting. I do have one that's not a Universal movie, but I do think he uses the monsters probably more effectively than any of them, and that's Monster Squad.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's, they obviously couldn't get the rights, so they made their own monsters that are very inspired by certain ones, but I think they handled it extremely well, and the movie's just fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that's the greatest Monster Mash movie of them all. Yeah, it
They're
treats all of them very respectfully, and it's them. It's Dracula. It's the Wolfman. It's Frankenstein's monster.
And not a Universal monster movie either, but we could have got a shared universe that never happened, thanks to Kenneth Branagh, was Bram Stoker's Dracula and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was originally to be directed by Francis Ford Coppola. He just could not stand Kenneth Branagh, let Kenneth Branagh take over directing and just have the movie. I think he's a producer on it.
Mm-hmm. But I think he did too much.
Yeah, and then he was going to actually kind of tie it into Bram Stoker's if he would have not stepped away from it.
Yeah.
And I think that both those movies were well received. Both of them are very good, and I think we would have got a shared universe unintentionally out of that.
And even
was it the same company that put?
I think
the
it was
same studio?
Columbia TriStar, yeah. Because they had done Dracula, then it did. Because they always get packaged together, Dracula, Frankenstein, and Wolf. So it's kind of very loosely remakes. But
yeah.
Yeah, I'll finish it off with one question. The whole reason we did this is because The Invisible Man comes out. One, are we looking forward to that? Two, where do you want to see Universal go? Because they have like 5 movies still in the pipeline that are not Dark Universe, not sequels to The Invisible Man. Thoughts on Invisible Man and where you want the Universal monsters to go?
I'm curious to see. I think Lee Winnell is a fabulous writer-director, so I'm curious to see what his take on the Invisible Man is. It looks a lot more mean-spirited than, say, like Hollow Man, which was kind of fun. But I don't know. I mean, I love these originals. Yes, I realize they're very dated, and not everybody can appreciate them the way they are. But I don't know. It's you're at this point you're just churning out
Remakes to make money.
Yeah. You're just cashing in on the name. Unless you have an absolutely brilliant idea. Like I do believe The Mummy definitely updated that version. But I don't know. I'm kind of torn.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to The Invisible Man. I think it's taking the spirit of what the original Invisible Man was, just this cruel man that discovered this power, and taking things that
putting a modern
domestic
twist on,
abuse and using that as like just this sociopath, as a narcissist. And I like that. I like what Universal's doing, where they've tried their own hand. I think with what is it now, almost 100 years. I think they've come to terms with like they don't know what they're doing, and Blumhouse kind of does know what they're doing. So they were just like, I mean that was pretty big for them to be like, oh, you know what, like
let's team up with a horror company to make a horror movie.
Yeah. And I think we're gonna be surprised by Invisible Man from just the trailer. I mean, I saw that trailer and I think you posted it or
probably
somebody. I remember when it came out, everyone was talking about it. I remember seeing it and I was just like, okay, I'm in on this. And I know this is from what is being said. I don't think Dark Universe is off the table yet, because Paul Feig is doing Dark Army and he's using Dark Universe in interviews. He's still dropping the name, and Universal is not denying it.
I think they're kind of stepping back their focus, and it's like, maybe let's just focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah, what I think with that is, I mean, I don't think it's off the table in the sense that it's a buzzword, but I don't think there's any game.
They're trying to rework it now.
I don't think there's any game plan where they're like, we're gonna create a Marvel Avengers like level.
Yeah.
I think what they need to do going forward, I've really thought a lot about this. I have a background as a writer too, so it's one of those things where I'm like, Buddy and I were talking, and I was like, you know what, I want to revamp the Marvel or the Universal monsters and just kind of like take modern takes on it and stuff like that. And this is before everything was going on, and Buddy was like, yeah, you should write it. And he's the one, Andy, and he's the one that told you like, oh, talk to Terry. And
shout out Andy Erickson.
Danger Zone, he'll get it. Inside joke. But
I understand that reference.
But anyways, this the thing is what they are almost like handcuffing themselves to their own mythology, or it's like, you know what, if you want to do these, just do them modern. And like that's what I like what they're doing with the Invisible Man. It's not like they're doing like different science, and like there's a part in the trailer where she throws the paint on him, and then you can see it's a suit. You can see like the little design. It's not like a face. It's like almost like hexagons or something like that. It's almost like he's wearing a suit that makes him invisible. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. It's not like the silly.
I haven't seen that. I was hoping you threw the paint on it and you see the goggles. I'm like, oh, like yeah.
No, there's this. Yeah, if you.
I stopped after that first trailer. I'm like, you showed enough.
Yeah. So sorry if it's spoiled.
No.
But I mean, there's that scene where she throws it, and I noticed that. I was like, oh, he's wearing a suit.
So it's almost that he basically developed a suit to become invisible, and not the fact that he's
taking a formula.
Right.
Maybe though. I mean that's what I'm taking from it, just from that little bit that I saw on there. But I was just thinking, like Dracula, like the perfect example of Dracula. Like there's still, like all these movies that do a Dracula is always like references the book and stuff like that. And it's like, you know what? How about you just have it so that Dracula is like play off the Vlad the Impaler. Just be like, that's the Dracula that you know in this timeline.
That's
in this
why
universe,
that's why I kind of like Dracula Untold.
Yeah.
For the most part, I think it's one of the better of the remakes.
Yes.
Because it goes back to that.
Yep.
It's where he's
Well,
Vlad the Impaler for the in a PG-13.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Bram Stoker's though, they do reference that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely on my watch list.
Yeah, but I mean, like my thing is just like do it modern. Like, how did I describe it? It was kind of like 50 Shades of Grey meets, something modern, like The Great Gatsby meets, a horror movie, where it's just like you can have this eccentric rich man like trying to buy property in New York, because I mean that's what Dracula was doing in the book, was trying to buy property in London, and it could just be like, oh, what is, who is he and this and that, and he could have his name and Dracula, and they're like, oh, and it's like he's descendant from Vlad the Impaler, and it's like that's the big thing where he's just like, oh, we're embarrassed by the name, and I'm just trying to clean it up, and play off that it's just this eccentric billionaire, and like, he has these, these women that stay with him, and it's just like Dracula, they're kind of creepy, and it's like, oh, okay, and just play it off, or just do little teases, where like I always vision like do a tease where it's like he goes into a mirror and you're like, oh, it's this, you're not gonna see him, and then you see him and you're like, oh, because it was old mirrors that had silver, that's why you couldn't see him. There's little things that they could still do to take these characters and make them modern. And I guess my big point is just like, don't tie yourself to don't tie yourself to your own mythos and stuff. Just give us a Dracula movie. Just do a modern retelling, like do it fresh. Take all the rules that you had, throw them away, and just be like, you know what, we're gonna do our monster movies, and here you go, and just do that. And
yeah, I think the best way to go is go the way Del Toro went with Shape of Water.
Exactly.
He took the concept of Creature from the Black Lagoon, applied it to what he was making in his story, and told his own story with that mythos. Right. So I think that's kind of the step you got to go. Yeah, I still think they kind of don't know what they're doing. I'm hoping they right the ship with Invisible Man, because I like all the stuff Lee Winnell's done. Upgrade is fantastic.
Highly underrated movie.
Yeah. Upgrade might top anything his buddy James Wan's ever done. Mm-hmm. It's up there. It's great. So I'm excited to see more. I want more like creator-driven Universal monsters. Like, it seems like Lee Winnell seems like the guy that would be like, I loved Invisible Man growing up. I want to make my version of that. So give it to people that have loved these movies and want to take their own spin on that. So I think that's the way you got to go. I don't know how I feel about this Paul Feig Dark Army thing.
I honestly, I think it's one of those things that he's gonna put his time and effort in, and it's never gonna get see the light of day. And I wouldn't be surprised if this year, I would not be surprised if this year alone he walks away from it, or they just drop it.
Yeah, I think a lot of this hinges on how well Invisible Man does this weekend, how big the box office is, how well it's critically received. I think is a big part with them going forward. But yeah, I mean, they have that, the Dark Army. There's a Monster Mash movie that's a musical coming out. And Elizabeth Banks is behind this Invisible Woman. There's still talk of like the Bride of Frankenstein with Angelina Jolie. I think was supposed to be her at one point.
Another thing, especially with like Invisible Man, I think they should really start looking at just lower budget. You can still get quality actor, like.
I don't think this. I would have to look up this Lee Winnell, but he hasn't worked with big budgets very often, so I doubt this is a very big budget, especially with Blumhouse name. Blumhouse name behind it.
The most they've usually done is like $5 million.
That's what I'm saying That's what I'm saying is what Blumhouse was a smart choice because it's a lower budget, and in order to scare someone, you don't need a giant budget. Yeah. And especially with the Invisible Man, that's smart because it's the actor pretending there's someone there, and you can save a lot of money on that. And I think it's the best character to go with it, and just with who Blumhouse has used. I don't know if you guys watched the Hulu series.
Into the Dark.
Into the Dark.
I've watched a few here and there.
There's hit or misses, but there's some good ones. There's some really good gems in there, and how was it? Gigi Saul Guerrero. She did one at the end of last year, and I know she just made history. I think it was the first woman to sign first picture deal or whatever with Blumhouse and stuff like that. And I remember I really liked what she did, and I just kind of tweeted like, hey, with the whole thing, are you going to be doing anything with the
the monsters.
The monsters and stuff like that, or Dracula. And I was like, especially Dracula, I think she would do really well. And then she was actually really liked, and she responded back, and she said she would love to do it, and she's really hoping to get into that. So it's
that's the stuff I would like to see. More of these indie people that have come from more of the smaller films, the indie films, given their chance to direct these. Like I would love to see Issa Lopez, who did Tigers Are Not Afraid. I'd like to see her do like Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Or like The Wolfman. I think she could crush at either one of those.
I think, like I said, I think that's what with Blumhouse. I think that's the best move that Universal can do, is just giving it to these independent artists that they have a voice, they have a vision, and they can do things that are effective, that don't need that giant Hollywood budget, and you don't really need that for what these are. And for the love of God, just make good movies. Don't focus on a universe. I think that's where everyone's shooting themselves in the foot.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we'll leave it there then. Don't make a universe. Just make good movies. That's all we want. That's all we want. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Where can people find you guys online? If there's anything you guys want to plug or your social medias, let them know. Dom, go ahead and start with what you got.
Oh, shit. Well, you could find, I do tweet occasionally, but I'm more probably active on Facebook and Instagram. You can hit me up. There's also the Warwolf Productions page, where I try to keep that going as far as what projects are coming up, but I also don't want to reveal a whole lot. So yeah, you can find me on social media.
Terry?
I don't really have anything in the works right now. I mean, I got things going on, so I don't have anything to plug. I mean, I like talking movies and stuff, so I mean, Facebook, Terry Lee Gomez, you just go there.
You're quite active on the South Dakota film community page on Facebook too, so.
I do post on there, yeah. I love movies. I mean, I love movies. I love talking movies. I love, all that stuff. So it's just, I'm one of those people. If we have a common friend and you friend me, it's usually like, oh, okay, I'll talk to you. Like I'm social. Yeah,
and we'll get you both back on sometime on a different killer count, and we'll talk about it after which ones we want.
I hope so. I feel like 2017, The Mummy's gotten me booted
I'll let you guys know a different one that I think tops your 2017 Mummy or Van Helsing. So you can find me on Instagram, Casey_the_horror_guy. I'm reviewing every horror movie that I watch. I need to catch up on the last couple Universal monsters that I just watched this past weekend. But you can find Backlot 605 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where you'll find the Killer Countdown podcast as well. For this podcast and anything other Backlot 605 related for podcasts, we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube, and on backlot605.com for our latest movie news, reviews, discussions. That's where you can find Terry's buddy Andy Erickson doing reviews for us every couple of weeks. Yeah, that's where you can find us. So until next time, this has been the Killer Countdown for Universal Monsters, and we'll see you later.